Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacy and Phil Thompson.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacy.
And my name is Phil Thompson. Good to be with you today. We are a tech company that helps churches use technology, and we do all sorts of things from streaming video to mobile apps to website templates to, there's all sorts of things going on. How are you today, Steve?
I am doing great. Yeah, I was just thinking back. We've been involved with this since 2001.
Yeah.
That's a long time, man.
Yeah, it is a long time, and it's a testimony to you and to what we're doing here, and certainly have had some great relationships with ministries and churches over the years. And we're one of the originals.
Yes. First cloud-based church management system.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can probably, yeah.
And the naysayers are now on the cloud.
That's right. I remember, I've told you this before, but I don't know if our audience has heard it, but I remember one of the very popular, they're still around, I won't name them, but we were at a trade show and we had the first cloud-based church management system, and they came around and said, "We see you people come and go. This is just a fad." So it was a woman. It's actually very rude. I was very surprised how unprofessional they were. So, but everybody else was great. But yeah, I was like, wow, thanks for the warm welcome.
Yeah, the internet's just a fad. It's just going away.
Yeah.
But, I think we talked about that last week. Well, speaking of the internet, we're going to talk about streaming online and having there's lots of different names for it: online campus, web campus, lots of different things. Brian Vassell, speaking of pioneers, Brian Vassell, who's with Potential Church in Florida, says this: an online campus is a community of people who are learning about, connecting with, and growing closer to God in a virtual environment. The goals of an online campus are similar to that of a brick and mortar counterpart. That is, to use whatever tools available to help people enter into a saving relationship with Jesus Christ, equip them to serve their communities, and go into the world, both physically and online, to share the gospel. And I think that's a nice little statement there from Brian. It kind of sums up what church online can be.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of where our heart for the ministry is to make the stream more than just a video one-way engagement, but an opportunity to reach people and interact and that sort of thing. So it's not just a TV program on the internet.
That's right. Online campuses are much more than just watching live streaming video. And people can log into their computers, their smartphones, they can engage in worship, they can watch a sermon, they can interact with others, they can pray together, they can respond to invitations, challenges, they can give online. If you really do it, what we think is a good way to do it is to have what you might call a church online pastor or internet campus pastor. If you can have somebody that's involved in that makes a big difference as well. Yes,
exactly. And you were doing that at one time.
Yeah, I was doing that at one time and enjoyed it very much. It was a great experience. So first, let's talk. What we're going to talk about today are 10 helpful online tips when it comes to having a church online campus, web campus, whatever you want to call it. They're interchangeable. But before we do that, let's kind of give a little introduction here to what really some great features of having a online campus are.
Right. And number one is, and I mention this quite often, it's an introduction to your church. It's actually a really easy way for people that attend your church to invite others and get exposed to your church. So it's a great introduction to the church. Your website's the front door of your church, but the live online worship service allows people to see if that church is going to be a good fit for them.
Yeah, it creates windows. I like to say creates windows. People can look in, so to speak, and see what your how your worship is. If it's a style that fits them, the person who's speaking, does he or she have a style that kind of helps them connect? Because there's different churches. Not every church, there's different churches for different people, and not one church doesn't fit everybody. And so I think it's a great opportunity for people to take a look and see what you are.
And it's a real low risk. I think I mentioned this to you before, but one of my friends said the most uncomfortable time he's had in his life was at a church. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was a first time at a church. It was not what he expected. He just wanted to get out of there. So he probably didn't return to too many churches, but online it's very easy. I mean, you can slip in and say, this is not quite a fit for me, and you can slip out. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and the second point would be, that kind of leads into the second point. It's a great outreach tool for your church. I mean, you've got, there's people seeking God. There are people seeking spiritual things. And, attending a church, as you just mentioned, can be very threatening.
Right.
Bad experiences you've had in the past, or you just don't know what to expect, as your friend experienced.
And you've heard this before too, right? The number one reason why people don't go to church
is because of church. I don't know.
It's the number one reason they don't go to church is because they've been to church.
Yeah. I can attest to that. I had that same experience. Being raised a Unitarian and then visiting some of my friends' churches were not a good experience until I met this one church that was a very positive experience. And of course, I had a relationship with a friend who took me there. So yeah, it's a great outreach for your church. And that's the second point here when we're kind of getting into some features. And then the third point is it's a lifeline for your church family.
Right.
Yeah. What we mean by that is, there's all sorts of stuff going on. If you got kids, sports tournaments happen on the weekend, which compete with church. Of course, people get sick, kids get sick, vacations pop up. You take business trips. There's lots of reasons why sometimes it's hard to attend church on a regular basis, especially here in the year 2018, going to be 2019 soon. And online streaming, can really help you keep connected to your spiritual community.
Right, exactly. I remember back when our church treasurer had to take a trip to Europe. And he was attending service online. Obviously it was in the evening for him there, but he could still come to church. It was kind of neat, connecting up with him, and he's saying, "Hey, I'm in Italy," or I'm not sure exactly where he was. Yeah. And I'm going to church in Tucson.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, they can still stay connected even if they're an ocean apart. Stay connected spiritually, emotionally, and even financially. You can give online no matter where you're at. So great opportunity. So the fourth point would be when it comes to some of the features, a church multiplication strategy. So in other words, you may have a situation where your facility is just not big enough and you got more people than you can handle, and yet you can still kind of increase your reach by not having to build another building or add on to another building. You can actually stream to either another campus, which is what a lot of people have done over the years. Mm-hmm. We've been a part of that. You and I have too, right, Steve?
Yes, exactly.
You stream to a different campus.
Right. And plus you have the world is your oyster, right? You have people that can attend and become a part of your church from anywhere around the globe. Yeah. So you're not limited by some geography. So it's a way to grow your church and your church family.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You've got that factor. And then, we just mentioned, you could, if you have another facility somewhere, you can stream to that. All right. Well, so I think those are good things. It's a great way to streaming videos, a great opportunity, great way to expand your reach. So let's jump into 10 helpful tips when it comes to having an online campus, shall we?
Yes, it looks like I was already reading ahead here, because tip number 1 is an online campus is just another neighborhood. Yeah. It's full of people far from God and not limited by geography or the size of your building.
Yeah. And so you should always keep that in mind when you're doing streaming. I know we have people listening right now, people that do stream with us or other companies. So always keep that in mind. It's a bunch of people out there, and you're not limited. So you also, and we'll get to that in one of the tips here, but you also need to be sensitive to that. So tip number 2.
Tip number 2: online campuses won't be seen as a real campus unless you see online relationships as legitimate.
So, yeah. So this has been a struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's just online, doesn't count. But it does count. And there are people that are looking for a relationship, and you can certainly do that even if it's online or digital. We've done, as you know, when I was with your church, we did some online community groups, we called them. I think we called them care groups, but they were online small groups is what we used. And we literally had people different parts of the country meeting once a week on a Wednesday night.
Right.
And we had relationship, and they were people in Ohio or Pennsylvania or California.
Yeah.
We were together.
I know, and we're probably one of the believers here, but my wife, early internet days, so this would have been late or mid to late 90s, she was a part of a forum group for moms. It wasn't a MOPS kind of thing, but it was a similar. It was I can't remember exactly what it was. It was back in the days of AOL Instant Messenger and that sort of thing. And she developed a relationship with a guy that was known as Lawn Elf, and he lived in, I think, Ohio, and that she still connects with today. And it's been many years now. Never met him in person, but knows a lot about that particular person. What kind of music he was in, a band, and anyway. So you can develop relationships online.
Yeah. I still have some Facebook friends from the days when I was with your church doing as the church online pastor, and Don Young, who I hadn't talked to for probably a couple of years. Don Young emailed me the other day. He was one of our church online helpers a few years ago, more than a few years ago now, I guess, at your church. Remember Don, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
He reached out to me the other day. So relationships, it's very legit. It's maybe a little different than seeing somebody, your next door neighbor, but it's very similar in some ways as well. So you really need to see this as real, and you need to see relationships as legit. So,
all right. So tip number 3. Successful online campuses have a heart. So appoint a dedicated online campus pastor to provide care for those online.
Yeah, that's really important. And again, maybe you can't pay somebody to be your church online pastor, but there are some volunteers that would be willing to help. You just need to make that need known in your church, and make that opportunity known, I should say. But to make it successful, you really have to have somebody that kind of buys into it and really kind of drives it, so to speak. If you just see it as a secondary, oh yeah, we do that, we do some streaming, and it's way down the list on other priorities, and then your chances are you're not going to be very successful at it. But if you have somebody that drives it, that has passion for it, and again, volunteers can do this, it will make it so much better for the viewers and for your church, and you'll see it grow, and you'll see amazing things happen.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely the more you pour into it, the more fruit it's going to bear. So through growth and reaching people and other things.
Yep. Absolutely. So
tip number 4, go for it.
Tip number 4, determine the goal and priorities of your online campus. So is it an outreach? Is it member care? I mean, is it kind of church marketing? I think it can be all, but I think you do need to sit down and say, how are we going to approach this? We're doing this now. What's our goals? What's our priorities? And I think that's a good thing to do. And again, this kind of ties in with having a passion for it, because if you don't have any goals for it, then it's just, it's the old saying, if you don't have a target, you'll
Hit it
every time or miss it every time. I don't know. We kind of screwed that up.
Unless you're Charlie Brown, right? You just draw it afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing about this is if you kind of need to go into it, with a specific goal, because you'll make different decisions and tailor things a different way. Because an outreach, a focused online campus is going to be very different than member care. How do we allow those that can't attend in person? So you're going to do things a little differently.
That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Tip number 5: go to school on other churches that are doing the online campuses as well. So basically, lots of people are doing it today. When we first started in it, there weren't that many, but now a lot of people are doing it. My advice would be check on what some other people are doing, especially if you're new to this. Even if you've been doing it for a while, you might pick up some things, some new things that they might be doing with it, the ways they're developing it, ways they're reaching people with it. So it's always good not to just live in your own little world. And I always used to say this as a senior pastor. I mean, what are we doing? What are some other pastors doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are some other churches doing in our community? Not that we're in competition, but how can we learn and grow, and how can we reach more people?
Right.
So I think it's an important tip.
And we are a great resource for that. So if you want to, if you're like, I don't know how to reach out or who's doing a really good job, hit us up and we can point you in the right direction. I know and the churches that we're, that we're serving are more than welcome to, let me give you, this is how we figured out how to do this, and that's why our lighting looks so good, or, whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about some technical things that you could do to improve, as well as relational things. So absolutely, hit us up for that. All right. So tip number 6.
So smart churches make it easy to give digitally online.
Yeah, this is important, really. I mean, it's part of worship, and you really need to make it, and today, again, you've got lots of tools out there, and there's lots of companies that will handle your finances.
This is one of the tips I think a lot of the churches are doing pretty well. They're including the ability for people to give online on their campuses. So,
and with our platform, that's easy to do because you can put some embed code or a link in there. If you're using PayPal, or I don't know, there's all sorts of companies out there, Easy Tithe or different things like that, and make it available out there for people to give. I was church online pastor for your church a number of years ago, and we used to do breakaways and things, which we've talked about here in some other podcasts, but you literally would switch over from the camera that was in the worship center to me at certain times during the service. And I remember, asking people to give online. Hey, you got an opportunity to give online. And somebody gave us a 6-figure check, which really helped the church at the time. We were really struggling financially. And so never underestimate the opportunity when you ask people to give.
Yes. And that was a full-time online attender.
Yeah.
So, it can happen. All right, moving on here. Number 7, tip number 7, create a digital community with your online campus by integrating things like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the social media tools.
Yeah. Again, this is another way to connect. What we do at streamingchurch.tv is we have a lot of those tools right there on the streaming platform if you choose to use them. So people can send links out to Twitter, to Facebook. There's lots of different opportunities that you can use to help bring people in. Use those different social media tools like Instagram and others to let people know you're streaming, to connect with people, and make it so, again, you're using all the assets, so to speak, out there that are there to help connect people.
Mm-hmm. All right, tip number 8 here: decide ahead of time how your campus will handle communion and baptism.
Well, that's a good one. I'm trying to think. I think I've led communion in the past online, and again, that was back in the days where we would switch cameras over to me at certain times. I think I may have done that before, but I'm not sure how you baptize people online. You got any ideas on that?
That one may be a little tougher, huh? But communion, we definitely exercise the communion. We'll actually give people a heads up to, hey, go grab some juice and cracker because we're going to be doing communion in a few minutes, and so and then we lead communion both in the facility and online.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Give them a heads up so they can create their own elements.
Yeah. So a remote baptism, you would need to get a video, an audio feed from the remote location. So,
and getting baptized while holding your smartphone or your laptop, probably not a good idea. I don't know.
yes.
Maybe somebody can come up with that.
Yes. So tip number 9 here, I assume we're getting towards the end of this here. So online campuses cost less than a building, but they may cost more than you think. So depending on the level of, you can jump into streaming for, you can dip your toe or you can go all in. So you want to make sure you set up a budget for, if you want to do a quality job, create a small staff, some good equipment, and be able to pay for your streaming.
Yeah, I think, you hit on that. And I think there's a couple ways to look at this. We always encourage people to start with what you got.
Right.
And so, as you have mentioned many times over the years, your church used to be my church, started with, I think, a borrowed webcam that I think not a webcam, but a borrowed camcorder that came from you, I think, right?
Yes.
And set it up on a tripod and away we go. And over the years, things expanded.
Right. And I recommend, start where you're at and then grow into it. And especially, the churches are going to be, or the people visiting your church are going to understand your capabilities and situation. You don't want to create a painful experience.
No.
But
yeah.
But even with very inexpensive equipment, you can get going and then just learn and grow over several weeks if it takes that long.
Yeah, and there's people out there that would say, "Oh no, you got to wait till you get 2 or 3 cameras and do this and do that." And look, I understand what they're getting at. They're trying to say you need to create a good experience for people before you do it, and I would agree with that. But especially today, the cameras today, even the consumer grade camcorders, they're pretty good, mm-hmm. And you've got a good one that I'm borrowing for something this weekend. And, you could set something up, and if you put a little TLC in it, tender loving care, you can make something work that looks pretty good. Make sure your lighting is good.
Yeah. And
your audio is good.
Yeah. And I can see, if I'm a church of 1,000 and I do a single borrowed, camera thing, and don't kind of mature from there.
Right.
That it's kind of beneath the, what you would come to expect from that, that particular church. But for most people in most churches, you can look like a mega church online with very little assets. So.
Yeah, the devil's in the details, and I think if you can stay with the details, whoever's doing it. And look, here's the other point I want to make on this, and that is if you have a passion for it, you start doing it with what you've got, and it looks okay. Like I said, the audio is important, your lighting's good where your camera is. If it looks okay, chances are you will get some other people that will be interested in what you're doing, and they can add to the experience. And we've seen people give money for, I like what you're doing here, but we certainly could use a better camera. And so here's $1,000, and I mean, people get involved in it and they will give and they will help. And so it's, again, getting back to the thing we mentioned earlier about having a passion for it. Start with what you got to have a passion for it, and you will be surprised how God adds. And before you know it, you could be up to 3 cameras and, different lighting and several volunteers, and it can be amazing.
All right. So we're down to tip number 10 here.
That's right.
And just the one thing is to recognize that your online campus is a worldwide campus.
Right.
So be sensitive to world events, holidays, America-centric attitudes.
Yeah.
Be inclusive as possible.
Be inclusive. I think that's so important, because you have, as we mentioned earlier, you have people that could potentially be watching anywhere in the world. I mean, we've, again, getting back to our experience, people from China watching, people from different parts of Europe, Africa, whatever, the whole thing, Asia. You just don't know. And so I think you need to be sensitive to that. And it's not just, it's just not America only. Again, there may be people listening to this podcast, obviously from different countries, but as Americans, we tend to think everything revolves around us. And it's easy sometimes to get thinking about, everybody thinks this way. And no, that's not the case. There's different holidays, different ideas out there. And so just be sensitive to that as you're streaming.
That's it.
All right.
So 10 tips for improving or doing online campus and improving your online ministry.
Yeah, and that wraps us up. So look, if we can help you, if anything, if you have something to add to this, if you have something to detract from it, we're all ears. We'd be open to it. Just send us an email, support@streamingchurch.tv. That's support@streamingchurch.tv. Love to hear from you. Love to get your feedback on this. And anything that you can add to it would be helpful as well. And I think this is helpful, especially as we head in. This is the holidays now. It's December when this is being recorded. And, it's brand new year coming up soon. So great opportunity to do some streaming and to reach more people, not only during the holidays, but also in 2019.
Exactly.
All right. We are wrapping things up. So on the other side of the microphone, he is Steve Lacy. I am Phil Thompson. We appreciate you spending some time with us today. This has been the Church Solutions Podcast. We'll catch you again next time. Take care.